In the small town of Circleville, Ohio in 1976, something very strange began to happen. People in the town started receiving anonymous letters in their mailboxes. These letters were not friendly or harmless. They were mean, threatening, and full of secrets about people's private lives. The letters seemed to come from someone who knew a lot about the town and the people living there. The writer knew where people worked, who they were married to, and even what kind of cars they drove. It was as if the letter writer was watching everyone. At first, many people didn't take the letters seriously. They thought it was just a prank or some kind of joke. But the letters kept coming, and they became more and more frightening. They didn't just make accusations, they threatened people's lives. The letters told people to stop certain behaviors, or else they would be exposed or harmed. The situation soon became a nightmare for the whole town. One of the first and most frequent targets was Mary Gillespie, a school bus driver in Circleville. The anonymous letters accused her of having an affair with the local school superintendent, Gordon Massey. The letter said that if she didn't stop seeing him, something terrible would happen. Mary was shocked and scared. She denied having any affair and tried to ignore the letter, but soon her husband, Ron Gillespie, received a letter too. His letter told him to stop his wife's supposed affair and warned him that if he didn't, he would be in danger. The letters didn't stop. More came, each one filled with anger and threats. The letters were written in block letters, all capital letters, to hide the writer's handwriting. They had a strange, uneven style, as if the person was trying very hard not to be recognized. The words were full of rage, and the writer clearly had a personal grudge against the Gillespies. Then, something tragic happened. On August 19, 1977, Ron Gillespie received a mysterious phone call at home. He was alone with his daughter when the phone rang. After answering, he seemed angry and quickly grabbed his gun. He told his daughter he was going out to confront the person who had been writing the letters. He got into his pickup truck and drove off. That was the last time anyone saw him alive. A short time later, Ron's truck crashed into a tree, and he was killed instantly. When police arrived, they found that his gun had been fired once, but no bullet was found at the scene. No one knew what he had been shooting at, or if someone had been there. The police ruled the crash as an accident caused by drunk driving, but many people doubted that. Ron's family and friends didn't believe he had been drinking that day, and they thought something more sinister had happened. Maybe someone had caused the crash. The mysterious letters didn't stop after Ron's death. In fact, they increased. The writer now accused other people in the town, including the police, of covering up the truth. The letters said that Ron had been murdered and that the authorities were lying. As the months went on, hundreds of letters were sent all over Circleville. Nearly everyone in town either received one or knew someone who did. The letters talked about people's secrets, crimes, and affairs. They ruined friendships, marriages, and reputations. People became afraid to open their mail. Some even started moving away from Circleville because of the fear and gossip. The writer seemed to know everything about everyone, who was home, who was cheating, who was stealing, and who had secrets to hide. The Circleville letters became one of the strangest cases in American history. The local police and even the FBI tried to figure out who was behind them. But the letters came from different post offices, sometimes from nearby towns, and there were no fingerprints or clear clues. The writer always used the same style of writing: large, uneven block letters written with felt-tip pens. And the letters were often signed with no name. In 1983, several years after the first letters appeared, something even more frightening happened. Mary Gillespie was still working as a school bus driver. One day, while driving her route, she saw a sign by the side of the road. It had a nasty message about her daughter. Angry and upset, Mary stopped her bus and got out to take down the sign. When she pulled it off, she found that it was attached to a box with a gun inside. It was a booby trap, a device meant to kill or seriously hurt her when she removed the sign. Mary was lucky that she didn't pull the trap the wrong way. She called the police, and they investigated. The gun inside the box had been partially filed down, but the police were able to find the serial number on it. The number led them to Paul Freshour, who was Mary's brother-in-law, the husband of her sister, Karen Sue Gillespie. Paul Freshour was shocked when the police came to question him. He admitted that the gun had once been his, but said it had been stolen from his garage. He said he had no idea how it ended up in the booby trap. The police searched his house and found some strange things. They discovered samples of handwriting that they said looked similar to the Circleville Letters. Based on this, and the fact that the gun was his, the police believed that Paul Freshour was the Circleville letter writer. Paul was arrested and later put on trial for the attempted murder of Mary Gillespie. The main evidence against him was the gun and the fact that the letters had continued for years. The jury found him guilty, and he was sent to prison for 7 to 25 years. He always said he was innocent. After Paul went to prison, people expected the letters to stop. But they didn't. In fact, more letters arrived, even sent to Paul himself in prison. The letters accused him of being the writer and said he would never be free. These new letters were postmarked from Columbus, Ohio, which was not near the prison where Paul was being held. The prison officials said it would have been impossible for him to send the letters from inside because all his mail was checked carefully. This made the case even stranger. If Paul was in prison and the letters were still being sent, that meant someone else had to be writing them. But the letters kept coming for years, even while he was locked up. Paul was finally released from prison in 1994 after serving about 10 years. He continued to insist that he had been framed and that the real writer was still free. Even after Paul's release, no one could prove who the real Circleville letter writer was. Some people believed Paul really was guilty and that he had somehow found a way to send letters from prison through another person. Others thought he had been innocent all along and that someone else, maybe even a group of people, had written the letters to frame him. One theory said that Mary's sister, Karen Sue, might have been involved. She and Paul had gone through a bitter divorce before he was arrested, and she may have wanted revenge. Some people thought she could have stolen Paul's gun and set up the booby trap to make him look guilty. But there was never enough proof to charge her or anyone else. Other theories said that maybe more than one person had written the letters. Some might have copied the style of the first letters to spread fear or to get attention. After all, the town had become famous for the mystery, and some people might have wanted to keep it going. Even handwriting experts could not agree. Some experts said Paul's writing matched the letters, while others said it didn't. The case was so confusing that no one could say for sure who was behind everything. Over the years, the story of the Circleville Letters became a legend in Ohio and across the United States. It was featured on TV shows like Unsolved Mysteries and in newspapers and podcasts. People were fascinated by how one person, or maybe several, could frighten an entire town for so many years and never be caught. The letters stopped sometime in the 1990s, around the time Paul Freshour was released. Mary Gillespie continued to live in Circleville, and she kept quiet about the whole experience. She rarely talked about the letters or her husband's death in public. Paul Freshour also lived quietly after his release and died in 2012, still saying he was innocent. To this day, no one knows for sure who wrote the Circleville Letters. The police never found solid evidence, and the writer was never identified. The handwriting, the threats, the accidents, they all remain a mystery that has never been solved. The Circleville letter case is remembered not just because it was scary, but because it showed how fear and suspicion can spread in a small community. The letters destroyed trust between neighbors and friends. People began to suspect each other, thinking anyone could be the writer. The town was filled with paranoia for years. It also showed how even with modern investigations, handwriting experts, and police work, some crimes can remain unsolved. Many people today still try to figure out what really happened. Internet forums and amateur detectives have studied every detail: the letters, the handwriting, the deaths, and the possible motives. But despite all the theories, the truth remains hidden. Whoever the writer was, they managed to keep their identity secret for nearly 20 years. The Circleville Letters are now part of American mystery folklore. The story has inspired documentaries, crime shows, books, and podcasts. It has been compared to cases like the Zodiac Killer because of the use of letters and the way the writer played games with the public and the police. But unlike the Zodiac case, the Circleville Letters were not about murder. They were about fear, control, and revenge. Even though the letters stopped long ago, the people who lived through it never forgot. For them, it wasn't just a mystery. It was real life. They had to live every day wondering if they were being watched, if their mail would contain another threat, or if someone close to them was keeping a terrible secret. The case remains a chilling reminder that sometimes the scariest things are not ghosts or monsters, but real people who decide to hurt others with words and lies. The Circleville Letters case began as a strange set of anonymous notes in a small Ohio town, but it became one of the most puzzling mysteries in modern American history. Over several decades, hundreds of letters were sent. One man died under mysterious circumstances, another was imprisoned, and an entire town lived in fear. Even after police investigations, trials, and years of speculation, the truth was never found. Was it one angry person seeking revenge? Was it a family feud that got out of control? Or was it a larger conspiracy meant to scare a whole town? No one knows. What is certain is that the writer, whoever they were, succeeded in leaving behind one of the most haunting mysteries ever to come out of a small American town.